Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I am Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, but this month, we are taking leave of the grim world of Warhammer, and taking a vacation.
Right you are, Zeckthar. This month we have traveled to the strange world of Terran 42, or what the locals call it, Earth. We landed near the city known as Seattle to take in the sights and food of the city. Yet, while we are here, we will continue our walks.
Indeed, Yuksen. Yet, we will be taking a break from our normal historical chronicling. We figured we would let you, fine people of the galaxy, take a break as well, and discuss one of our favorite games, Dungeons and Dragons.
Quite right, brother. It is good to take a break away from the drudgery of life and simply play a fun game. Well, what are we going to discuss today?
Well, today we are going to talk about the wonderful food we've had here in Seattle. Huh?
Okay, we can talk about that, but shouldn't we talk about something more substantial? Like anything related to Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes. We were going to talk about DMing, but unfortunately, that isn't going to happen this week.
Why? If I recall right, your friend was supposed to help us with this. What was his name again? I believe it was Dan?
Yes, yeah, Dan is no longer available.
What did you do?
Well, he insulted my intelligence. He told me that Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, was African. She wasn't. She was Greek.
He had a problem with this, didn't he?
Yeah, he most certainly did.
And then what happened?
Well, our debate continued until I just couldn't stand it any longer.
You didn't atomize him, did you?
No, that's something you would do. Of course not. I just simply showed him the answer.
Oh no, you sent him back to Terran 42's time of 30 BC?
Yeah. That's what I did.
And now we are without another person to do our Vox with.
Yep.
And this guy was supposed to give us the finest of mead, and you sent him 2,000 plus years back in time.
Yes, that is correct.
You blasted our next character on the Vox 2 millennia backwards in history. Now what are we supposed to do? More importantly, where's my mead?
I hate to say it. There is no mead.
No mead?
Yeah, there is no mead.
Then what are we going to do this week?
I guess we talk about the sights and food we've seen here in Seattle.
Well, I guess. Oh, wait, I have a better idea.
What?
Why don't we discuss some of our favorite literature from Terran 42?
That's actually a very wonderful idea. Why didn't I think of that? Very well. What should we start with?
Well, how about those wonderful books about the galaxy far, far away?
You mean Star Wars?
What else?
Okay, so if we're going to talk about the Star Wars books, we have to talk about the movies first. And the ones that we're going to talk about specifically anyways have to be anyways the ones that George Lucas was involved with and was the creator of. You know the ones I'm talking about, Yuksen?
Yeah, the original trilogy, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then the first three being Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith.
Correct. We do have to kind of go into that just simply because all the books that you're going to be discussing about anyways kind of have to do with that lore, right?
Right.
Okay. So first off anyways, we've both watched the movies. The first three, anyways, that George Lucas did, which was 4, 5, and 6, were fantastic. They were a complete trilogy. They're one of the original trilogies that were just like awesome. Can I get an amen, Yuksen?
Well, of course, but
And then we go into the new generation, anyways, which was the first three, apparently, anyways, in the series, and we can go, they were okay, right?
Yeah, you do have to admit though the lightsaber scenes in the first one were pretty good.
Yes. You're talking about, of course, anyways, with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan Kenobi and what's the other guy's name?
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Thank you. Yeah, that is probably one of the best choreographed scenes I've seen in a long time. Fantastically done. The disappointing part about that is they killed a really cool bad guy. It would have been cool if he kept on in the series.
Well, later they bring him back and use the alternative
in Clone Wars and a couple other different animated series. They do that. But because everybody said, oh, you should bring this guy back, it was terrible that they killed him, and then they did. But that original series, anyways, was so fantastic. Okay, so real quick, what was your favorite part of the original series? New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi.
Well, the fact that it was really well written. I like the characters were all memorable. You could just within a few minutes, you knew what that character was like.
Who was your favorite character?
My favorite character was only in it for maybe 5 minutes.
Really?
Well, more than 5 minutes, but
please don't tell me it was Jabba the Hutt.
No.
Okay.
It was the original Boba Fett.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I don't know. I've always really liked Han Solo. Chewbacca I always liked too.
Yeah.
Those two, anyways. I always kind of liked them. And you know what? Luke is. I like Luke too. And their villains, by the way, I always like their villains too. Darth Vader is probably one of my favorite villains of all time.
Yeah, they make all the characters likable, which is something that's very hard to do.
Very hard to do. By the way, Darth Vader.
For maybe Grand Moff Tarkin. I believe he's the guy who was in charge of the Death Star. But, that's because all you see him do is basically go, we're going to blow up your planet.
He's still a notable character because, while he's not likable, he's a very good character just simply because you're just like, this is the bad guy.
Yeah.
And I have to, we have to say right here, right now, anyways, Darth Vader would never have been as great of a character if it wasn't for James Earl Jones doing his voice.
Yeah.
It is so perfect.
Just that, since I believe the original guy, whose name was David Prowse, I think.
I don't remember, but it's the guy who actually did all the acting in it. James Earl Jones, though, put the voice to it.
But the other guy was he was British and a British accent, which I'm pretty sure you can wholeheartedly agree probably wouldn't have matched Darth Vader at all. Even if we were to exclude James Earl Jones.
I mean, where Vader is leaning over menacingly anyways to Leia anyways and saying, instead of tell me where the rebels are, he goes, pardon me, madam, could you tell me where the rebels are, Pip Pip? We're gone over a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the writing. Okay, so yeah, the first three anyways has a very good chronological story that is eloquent. It's simple and it works perfectly. And every character anyways that's in it anyways fits into it amazingly. The only two that really aren't supposed to, and that's the two droids, R2-D2 and C-3PO. They're supposed to be and by the way, those two actors hate each other. But just that aspect of it's a story about a young hero anyways, becoming who he is, and then eventually succeeding in saving the galaxy over 3 movies. And he meets characters anyways, and their own character paths anyways follow kind of the same concept. or a concept anyways that works for them. Like for instance, one of my favorite characters is Han Solo. Him
Right.
becoming this brigand anyways and slowly becoming anyways like a really cool stand-up character. I mean, he's still, the smuggler of old, but at the same time anyways, he develops anyways a concept of like loyalty.
It's another fact that should be brought up is the fact that it's written well enough that they have multiple main characters and all of them go through that like standard, like well-written plot where you start off at this is their base level, and then as time goes by, they grow and then become what they are. Instead of just jumping from, oh, they're nothing to they're everything in 5 minutes. I mean,
well, another good
they don't succeed every time.
Mm-hmm. Another good example
gets his hand chopped off. I'm pretty sure that's not succeeding.
Right. Like I was going to say, anyways, another good example is actually Princess Leia. I mean, she starts out as this very haughty individual, anyways, that is just very pompous. And as it goes forward, anyways, I mean, she still keeps that characteristic, but at the same time, she becomes a little bit more humble by the time you get to the end of it. She learns things. Her character develops, which is, I think, something that is very important anyways, that I hate to say it in Terran 42, with new movies anyways, people have forgotten.
But anyways, let's move on to the books.
Oh, did you agree with me real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes.
There are a few exceptions, but
yes.
we aren't going into that.
No.
That's down the rabbit hole. We're talking
about Star Wars. So,
talking about books.
Yes. So let's get to the books anyways. And the books were based off of the movie, correct?
Most of the books that I like are based off of a couple of the series are based off of like only like a couple years after the destruction of the Death Star.
First or second one?
The second one.
Okay.
Pretty much all of them take place after the destruction of the second Death Star.
So the end of the Empire?
Well, it isn't really the end of the Empire.
Oh.
That's the thing.
Okay.
The Galactic Empire still exists,
despite
the Emperor, because if you remember in the first one, what ended up happening is the Emperor destroyed the Senate and then basically gave the power over to these Grand Moffs.
What?
Anyways.
No.
What he did is kind of like,
about? Okay, so
put it where...
New Hope, if I recall right, in the text of the New Hope anyways, with the scrolling screen anyways, the Emperor dissolves the Senate and becomes the Emperor of the universe.
Right.
What are you talking about with Grand Moffs?
Grand Moffs.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Grand Moffs. No.
Moths. Those guys that are attracted to light. Okay, what are you talking about here?
Okay, so one of the things that he did is basically when he dissolved and became emperor, he ended up giving power to certain areas to different Moffs. So he still ruled everything, but he had, of course, basically it's kind of like you had the commander-in-chief and then you had the generals.
Right. So was
the generals have their own like sections that they actually have.
Okay, so hang on a second. So Grand Tarkin was one of these?
Yes.
Okay. That's why, by the way, if I recall right anyways, in the movies, he kind of could order Vader around, right?
Well,
he does in the movies.
Yeah, he kind of does.
Well, okay, so
he has enough authority to go to basically say, Darth Vader, I think you should do this, and in fact, could you do this? If he didn't have that amount of power, it would have been like Darth Vader would have just probably looked at him and laughed.
Or force choked him.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, sorry, carry on with the books.
After the Emperor dies, certain things happen. Like, for example, Coruscant is not completely demolished about this. In fact, the Empire tries to spin it where basically the Emperor sacrificed himself to save the galaxy from the rebels. It's convoluted, which, yeah. Anyways.
Some might call that propaganda.
Yeah. So there's still the Galactic Empire is still there. It still exists, and despite that, the Rebel Alliance, which has now become the New Republic, is still trying to basically take over the
So the rebels are trying to become the new republic.
Yes. And
Okay.
trying to what do you call it?
Become a political force?
Yeah, that isn't the word that I'm thinking of though. Help the oppressed also.
Yeah. It sounds like the rebels.
Because, let's face it, the Galactic Empire treated aliens as scum.
It sounds very similar to the world that we've been documenting for the last 65 million years.
Right. So the majority of the books I've read have taken shortly off of that, and then there's one trilogy that I liked that was actually based off of Boba Fett. It's kind of a during this time period, but also not, because what ends up happening is he ends up escaping from the Sarlacc pit because he's Boba Fett.
Yeah. Okay, I will say anyways, real quick, if I might interject. The way they did it anyways in the show was terrible.
Yeah.
But go ahead. How do they do it in the books?
He ends up basically saved, in other words, because he has been like severely injured and acid's been eating away at him, so obviously he's not in the best condition. So somebody helps him, and so he goes on this mission, but at the same time he has with him this other bounty hunter, which they briefly show in Empire Strikes Back, where they're walking by all of the bounty hunters.
Uh-huh.
I was like, this is what we want. There's one that has a looks like he would be a resident of Tatooine because he has the whole desert sort of gear and stuff. And he actually basically ends up with a partnership with Boba Fett during this mission. But through this mission, Dengar, I believe is what his name is actually telling the story to this other person about things that Boba Fett had done in the past.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's in the future past the second Death Star, but it's also talking about events that happened before that.
So it's kind of like stuff that's going on right now anyways, but he's retelling stories of past bounties.
Yeah. So past interactions that he's had with people and now what he's doing now.
For those fine folks on the Vox anyways, who wrote these books?
The series with Boba Fett first book was called The Mandalorian Armor, and it was done by K.W. Jeter, Jeter.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of the series I really liked was called Rogue Squadron. In case people don't remember, those are the guys that suffered high losses in the last one.
Yeah.
Through their A-wing into a
bridge. Hang on a second, Yuksen. So is the whole series done by this guy by the name of Jeter? Or is it just one book?
The Mandalorian Armor Bounty Hunter Wars one with Boba Fett is.
Okay.
I believe.
All right. And that's the book that you're recommending, or that series, and then you have another series about Rogue Squadron.
The Bounty Hunter Wars series is one of the ones I recommend.
Okay. And that's the one done by who? Jeter?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the other one you're recommending? It has to do with Rogue Squadron.
Yeah. And basically that's what the X-Wing series is the way that they call it. Because, it's Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, they fly X-Wings. What's the storyline?
Well, it actually takes place around Wedge Antilles, who is one of the people that actually flew into the second Death Star.
He's one of the few Rogue Squadron guys, anyways, that survived all three movies, right?
Right.
Yeah, Wedge. That's my boy.
Yeah. Wedge. And so he's decided to basically recreate Rogue Squadron, the original 12 Rogue Squadron. And so he finds these different people he thinks will fit in it.
What's the purpose of the book, other than he's trying to create this?
Well, he ends up creating them, and then basically it's to achieve, the objectives change depending on where it is. But about the third or fourth book in, it's actually they're sent to basically free Coruscant.
Coruscant?
Yeah, Coruscant.
Isn't that the one that blew up?
No, that's Alderaan.
Oh, my bad.
Which, unfortunately, one of the characters in Rogue Squadron actually had family there.
Oh, that's a sad day.
Well, yeah, it's worse because he was on a Vox call with them.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really bad. And who wrote these books?
That one was written by Michael A. Stackpole.
Ah, I've heard good things about him.
And he also did a book that's a spin-off based on one of the characters that was called I, Jedi. Which is also very good.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of other books that if you want, I can add on at a later time, or if the listeners want a couple more books series that to recommend, I can do that.
You know what, Yuksen? I have a wonderful idea. I can go ahead and put in the description, anyways, all the books that we're talking about and the writers.
Okay.
Down in the bottom comments section thingy, whatever you call it. I don't know what you call it. Not here on Terran 42. In Warhammer, we just simply call it a Vox with a scrim scroll. But,
right.
You know. Any other authors that you really like their stuff that had to do with Star Wars?
There was actually R.A. Salvatore wrote a book it's basically Attack of the Clone Wars, except for he adds in more detail because, like movies can't go over what people are thinking.
Wait. R.A. Salvatore?
Yes.
You mean like R.A. Salvatore, the guy that wrote all the books anyways about D&D in the Forgotten Realms, R.A. Salvatore.
That is my assumption.
Well, pardon me, Yuksen, but I think we should move on then anyways to R.A. Salvatore.
Okay.
All right. R.A. Salvatore wrote a substantial amount of books anyways in the Forgotten Realms. Now, the Forgotten Realms is a grouping of books anyways that have to do with actually a D&D campaign.
Interesting.
Yes, I know. Fairly interesting anyways to what we've been talking about for the last, couple of weeks. And I've kind of brought up a few of his characters, but The Companions of the Hall is probably his most notable work. He's written about a bunch of different characters. Yuksen, obviously, you know who Drist is, right? Drist
that would be the dark elf that
Yeah.
that you actually like instead of thinking that they should die.
Yes, exactly. Dristo Erden is actually a likable character. He's a drow. He also has like this little figurine, anyways, that transports his hunting companion known as Guinevere, a giant panther, to help him fight by his side. And the original, so his original book series was known as the Icewind Dale trilogy, which moves on to other things. He also did something about Drist Do'Urden, like his origin story, which is very interesting, worth reading. So R.A. Salvatore, when he originally started writing the Icewind Dale trilogy, his main character was supposed to be this giant barbarian dude named Wolfgar, who is actually very important to all stories anyways of the Companions of the Hall. The funny part about it, though, is that when he was starting to write, he just had the outline. And his editor agent, anyway, says, okay, I'm going to go into this meeting. You need to have a sidekick for this guy. And Salvatore didn't have a sidekick. He's like, I don't have one. And she looks at him and goes, well, you have to have one because I'm going to go in here anyways and I'm going to pitch this. And they want a sidekick. And he goes, okay, fine. Drist Do'Urden. And she looks at him and she goes, can you spell that? And he goes, nope. She goes, okay. What is he? A drow. Really looks at him and goes, really? He goes, yeah. Okay. She toodles in, she gives his pitch, and he starts writing it. and he has to write in this sidekick. And the way he describes it is that within like 50 pages of the book, he realized that his sidekick is really his main character. And then he goes, crap. I had this whole idea. Now I got to change everything. And it wove into this great story. And a lot of it had to do with the simple fact, anyways, like what you mentioned, anyways, the Drow, the Dark Elf, they're always bad guys, right?
Or seen as at least scum, or not necessarily the bad guy, but the person that you don't really want to, be around.
Right. They're normally classed as villains or people that you don't want to associate with, like you just said. And that becomes actually kind of a building block, anyways, for Drizzt. It's him, anyways, dealing with this world, anyways, of people that just look at him in terror. And he meets up with a bunch of different people, anyways, that he can fight side by side with because they look past the color of his skin and they work well with him. It's actually a really great story and very good understanding, anyways, of just looking at a person who they are as opposed to their ethnicity, which is awesome. The first person that actually that kind of welcomes him into the fold is actually Brunor Battlehammer, who is a dwarf lord, and he is the epitome of a dwarf. Any stereotype you can possibly think about a dwarf in fantasy, that's Brunor. Except for he's also, combined with that anyways, he is also Leonidas from 300. He is this just like awe-inspiring presence. And then he has his daughter anyways, and his daughter is actually the one that brings Drizzt into the fold, and that's Canterbury. And she is a fantastic character, one of my favorites. And she's got this really cool bow that you don't need any quivers. It's like literally you just pull it back and it fires a magical arrow. Yeah, it's just like zaps into everybody. She becomes this great hunter. And she ends up becoming actually a love interest, anyways, with Drizzt when she gets older. She's human. Then there's also Regis. Regis is the halfling. And he is not like Tolkien's halflings. Well, he is and he isn't. So, yeah, okay. You're going, what? Okay. So, in D&D, anyways, halflings are the same as hobbits. Oh, okay. You're going to disagree with me. Go ahead. Go ahead, Yuksen. How are they different?
Well, hobbits, okay, to put it this way, hobbits are like a very specific variation of halfling. Whereas in halflings in Dungeons and Dragons are like, we have the ones who live in the mountains, those who live in the hills, and those who, all over the place. And depending on that changes what their character is like. Whereas hobbits are, okay, this is really what they are. There is no really huge variation. Hence why characters like Bilbo Baggins and Frodo Baggins and them are such outliers because they don't fit in that specific niche of what Hobbit is.
I will go ahead and disagree because even in Tolkien's books, throughout the rest of the realm, anyways, they're known as halflings. In the Shire, they're known as hobbits. Around the rest of the realm, anyways, they're known as halflings.
That doesn't change, though, that grouping narrative that I'm talking about.
You're just saying, anyways, that there's different populace in D&D, anyways, of halflings, as opposed to just having the Shire.
No, I'm saying the difference is the fact that in comparison to hobbits and those halflings, which are very in this narrow mindset, the ones in D&D have much broader area and characters. So it wouldn't be even remotely out of the ordinary for one to be an adventurer. Or
okay, well, let's see.
To be a warrior. Whereas in Tolkien stories, halflings were rarely ever warriors or adventurers or anything like that because they had this mindset of,
Yeah, but there were some. There was that one dude, anyways, that actually carried a mace and he rode on a pony to slaughter the horse. No, it was a pony. He couldn't fit on a horse.
There was one that could actually fit on a horse.
Anyways. Well, okay, so real quick, anyways, let's see if Regis, anyways, fits your category, anyways, for Hobbit. Okay. Furry feet.
Okay.
Check. Round belly.
Yeah.
Check. Short. Very short. Like all hobbits or halflings.
Right.
Loves to sit and fish and do nothing other than that, other than the simple concept of trading wares and enjoying his habitat.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a hobbit. Now, mind you, anyways, there is one thing, anyways, that you might disagree with, and that is he likes shiny stuff.
Oh, so he's like Gollum's race. Smeagol's race, sorry.
Which we're also... Okay. We can get into that anyways later. He likes trading, and he likes, anyways, and he has this pendant, anyways. It's this ruby, anyways, that helps him with his trading. It's like this hypnotic ruby that always is the best scammer. Yeah. And then, last but not least, anyways,
which doesn't really fit in with the hobbits of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I don't know. There are a few of them in there. But anyways, I digress. And the last but certainly not least, we have Wolfgar. Wolfgar is like a 7-foot tall human barbarian. And he is a beast. He is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he is, if Arnold Schwarzenegger was 7 feet tall. He's not. I think he's what, 6'3"? Anyways, I digress. And he's got this awesome warhammer, anyways, that Brunor made for him, where he can actually hurl it, and then when he says its name, it comes back. Sounds vaguely familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Schwarzenegger is 6'2".
6'2". Okay. This guy is 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
He would look at Schwarzenegger, and Schwarzenegger like, I am Conan. And Wolfgar would say, I don't care. I'm going to thump you into the ground. And they become this champion of the hall. And the reason why they become that, or champions of the hall, and the reason why they become that, so Brunor, back in the day anyways, his father was cast out of their mines, their caverns anyways, by the Drow, ironically. No, not the Drow. A giant lizard known as a dragon. This sounds vaguely familiar for anybody that's read anything of Tolkien. Very similar concept. And he gathers these people together anyways, and they go back anyways. They kill the dragon. They start their whole thing back up again anyways in the halls, and then they run into the Dark Elves. And then there's this huge battle between them and the Dark Elves, and they end up winning. And then they kind of move on from there, because most of these people are, other than well, actually all of them are more adventurous as opposed to just like staying squat in some place. And that's where actually before that and after that, they meet some of the greatest villains I think I've ever heard of. First off is Jaraxle. Now, for those of you who have listened to this Vox anyways, the guy that I made for your guys' campaign for D&D, Yuksen and Sakrona, the Dark Elf, what was his name? The Russian dude. Vasily, yeah. Vasily was actually very orchestrated anyways with Jaraxle. It's kind of the same character, except for I just made him Russian and loved vodka and cigarettes. But Jaraxle, who didn't like either of those two things, but Jaraxle is like the perfect anti-villain, if that makes sense.
Okay. So
he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's not really a good guy. What he's really doing is he's just...
opportunist?
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of teams up with this other guy, anyways, who's definitely a villain. And I've talked about Artemis Centauri. Artemis Centauri is the ultimate fighter, human fighter, and assassin. And he has a couple of magical weapons, anyways. His favorite is this dagger that literally sucks the soul out of somebody and gives him back health. It's a really cool dagger. But he is the villain. And the thing that he hates the most is Drist. And the reason why is because Drist is a great swordsman. Artemis Centauri thinks that he is the best. So his whole sole drive is to actually kill Drist. There's lots of intrigue throughout the whole thing. I would definitely recommend, anyways, looking up R.A. Salvatore's Companions of the Hall. Now, I've talked about these guys enough. I know, Yuksen, anyways, that you've got something, anyways, fairly similar that is something that you truly enjoy as well.
I wouldn't necessarily call it similar, but it is in the realm of fantasy and science fiction. So,
well, okay. What I mean by similar is it something that you hold dear to your heart as well as I.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a series done by an author by the name of Robert Asprin, and it's called the Myth series. And it's the main character is a human who his master ends up being killed. He ends up getting a new master as a magician who can't use magic anymore. And over time, he ends up running into a trollop, aka female troll, which most people shorten down her name because it's really hard to pronounce it or even think about pronouncing it, to Tanda, and her brother, whose name is Chumley, who looks like you would think basically a troll would look like. Big, hulking, hairy.
Like the troll under the bridge.
Yeah. And later on, he ends up becoming part of basically what Terran 42 would consider the mob. I believe they refer to it actually as the mob. And so he gets these two bodyguards called Guido and Nunzio.
Oh.
And they are both like the quintessential that you would think of as a mob character. They always talk with that sort of mentality of, in the business, these guards are assigned to them by a Don. If people don't remember what Dons are, I want to just say look up The Godfather.
Oh, you mean like Don Corleone?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so like mobsters.
Right.
Or gangsters. From back in, I believe it was what, the 1920s? 1930s?
Around the time of Prohibition, which
yeah.
Terran 42.
So these are those kind of guys.
Yeah.
And
these guys fit that sort of thing to a T. They have the 3-piece suit.
Love Italian food.
Stripe, They talk about, what?
I said, have an ice pick, handy. Yeah, those guys. Anyways.
And so there is a book that's based around actually them trying to prevent an army from continuing taking over the world that Skeev actually resides in. And that's pretty funny because it's taken from their point of view. So it's like a gangster's point of view on them having to join the army to stop the army. So they're doing things like, so basically they're giving you the rules so you know just where to stop before getting in trouble.
But, okay, real quick anyways, what's the storyline?
Okay, so depending on the book, the overall thing is Skeev is a apprentice to a magician who ends up dying, and his buddy, who the magician put a prank on, can no longer use magic for like 1,000 years or something like that.
Okay.
So, and yet he's decided to take Skeev under his wing, and Oz is, well, they have what are called demons. They're spelled Dimen because they travel to different dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And so these different dimensions have generally different levels of technology, and all of them generally have magic. Some places have less than others.
Hang on. So real
Steve is
quick.
trying to advance in his knowledge. At the same time, he's basically trying to survive.
So real quick. Demons aren't a bad thing in this particular book.
No. Well,
Okay.
not all of them anyways.
So they could be good or bad.
Yes.
Okay. So it's just like a species known as demons.
No, demons refers to any dimensional traveling creature. So technically,
Oh.
Skeeve, after he's traveled to several different dimensions,
It's
would
known
be
as a
called a
demon.
demon, even though he's
Okay.
human. And they do have devils spelled with two E's on the end instead.
Well, what are devils?
They are pretty much what you'd think a devil looks like, but generally they're more often seen as very shrewd and generally opportunistic businessmen.
Oh, okay. So kind of like foxes in old mythology for Terran 42.
Kinda.
Okay. So they're not necessarily evil. They're okay. They're more like Jar Axle.
Yeah.
Okay.
If Jaraxel had their own like store, and
Yeah,
yeah.
he really doesn't have one of those. Anyways,
Um,
what's the point of this whole series?
the point is to see how Skeeve, who over time actually ends up collecting more and more people around him, grows, and how the people around him also grow as time goes by. Because
Sounds
first he
interesting.
starts off like in this little hut, you know,
Right.
and then later he ends up taking residence in a place called the Bazaar, which is basically if you were to go to, well, like a bazaar basically, except for instead of just being one small place, it's like the entire planet. And it is seen pretty much kind of like a gateway to other dimensions.
So it's him becoming the champion that everybody needs. This is the hero story, right? Starts in humble beginnings and becomes the awesome power of the hero, right?
That's what you would think. His character isn't really he does heroic things now and again, but he isn't necessarily what you consider like a champion of heroism. Like he kind of makes sure that somebody doesn't take over by giving them a different place for them to attack. So the
Okay.
methods aren't necessarily heroic.
So instead of becoming the hero that he was born to be, he becomes, well, a skeeve.
Exactly.
All right. Sounds actually kind of funny. Is it a funny series?
It is very humorous. All of the books in the series have myth in them, and generally myth replaces like miss. Like there's one's called class dismissed instead of dismissed. He has bad puns in there. In some cases, at the beginning of chapters, he has quotes from notable people from like Bruce Lee or Darth Vader or
Okay.
just yes, he has one from Darth Vader.
Doesn't make any sense, but okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it is very a comedy oriented series.
okay. So it's a comedic
It's a
sci-fi
comedy
slash
fantasy.
fantasy. Yeah. All right. Well, I hate to move on from this because I really actually just like to pick your brain about this whole ridiculous series known as Myth. But we do have to press on. And we do have to talk about the Lord of the Rings. Or more importantly, anyways, Tolkien's work, which means Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, all of his work. I mean, because let's face it, anyways, if you're talking about any of these other things that we've already talked about, you're seeing a lot of Tolkien in there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So let's start this off real quick, anyways. What do you think that he really mastered? Why do we follow Tolkien, anyways, in all these fantasy genres or sci-fi?
Well, part of it was like, for example, a storytelling is what it is. In fact, originally The Hobbit was just something that he created as basically a bedtime story for his kids. And so
Really?
he said, "Hey, you know what? You should turn this into a book."
Really?
Yeah,
Really? That's the Hobbit?
yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That is if I remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure it was meant as a story, not as a book originally. And so, because of that, he was able to create a small world just from that area. And then when it became even more masterful, because he took that world and he just expanded it when he made Lord of the Rings.
Okay, I gotta stop you right there, real quick. And you're probably gonna agree with me on this, Yuksen, but the reason why we remember Tolkien is because of his world building.
Yes.
I mean, he developed elves and orcs and goblins and dwarves and all these things anyways that we really know, and he built them into a world. And not only did he build them into a world, he described it so well that we actually, I mean, people on Terran 42 today anyways still look at as just simply fantasy. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Tolkien, right?
If it would, it'd be pale in comparison to what it is. Just put it that way. If it did.
Hang on, do you really think that D&D would exist today if it wasn't for Tolkien?
I am not sure. I mean,
Oh,
technically, there's different things that, for example, they did pull dark elves from somewhere that obviously wasn't Tolkien. Tolkien doesn't have any dark elves.
right. So they use their own imagination.
There is an idea that there may have been one, but it wouldn't be nearly as expansive or thought out
Oh, I hear what you're
or
saying.
well constructed.
No. I think that okay, D&D might have existed today without Tolkien, but it would have been drastically different than what we're looking at right now.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
One of the things that I do find interesting is even though he just like expanded, most people think about it as like, oh yeah, he expanded the world with Lord of the Rings, just that story itself. But and this is something that's mentioned, don't know who did, but at the end of Lord of the Rings, he has the appendices. And those things are just as important when it comes to building this world because it goes over things like different characters' genealogy and like little brief things on what those people did that helped shape Middle Earth. Like they
Yeah,
have Durin, the king of the mountain, and
Under the
he
Mountain.
stopped people from actually entering Moria originally.
I think you meant Under the Mountain.
No, of the Iron Mountains.
No, okay. So Durin was known as King Under the Mountain.
No, was it Dane?
Actually, there were a lot of Durins.
No.
The original was known anyways as Durin, King Under the Mountain.
Hold on. That's gonna bug me now. Hold on.
Oh, Yuksen is actually getting into his chronicling. Poor Yuksen. Still using anyways paper. I myself anyways like to use our computer sensories. While Yuksen is looking this up, I will say I do have some problems with Lord of the Rings. And here's how it boils down. Tolkien was master of building a world. He did it great. The problem that I had with his work anyways was it was very dry. You would get to, okay, so like for instance, at the end of The Hobbit, and you've got this gigantic titanic battle that is ready anyways to pursue. And instead of actually working through the soldiers or giving any concept of what's going on with it, it was very English. In which case, it was just like,
who would have guessed that? Him being English and all.
Yes. But it was very much, anyways. It's like we had 5,000 people on this side, we had 10,000 people on this side, and then we had 2,000 people on this side, and we had 3,000 people on this side, and then they all fought together, and it was a dreadful ruckus. And at the very end, anyways, good prevailed. Literally, his battles were literally like 2 sentences. It was terrible. It was so dry. You're just like, well, what changed the concept of the battle? Do we have formations? Do we have anything along those lines anyways that proceeded how battles actually work? No. We just have the dry English, which was just this, and then they, those guys died, and we prevailed, and the seagulls feasted upon their flesh. I mean, that's all we got. Where's the character development in that? Well, not only that, but where's the character development in any of his stuff? It's hard to find, and when you do find it, it's obtuse, and ironically, it makes the story go, which is interesting. It's so obtuse. It's not in any ways that the battle is upheld. It's before that, which seems obtuse today, well, especially with people in Terran 42. Everything is now, right? Everything's now.
Right.
We have no buildup. We have no concept, anyways, of what people are thinking until they get into it. Tolkien did that.
But he did it in a way where people were actually able to see things progress. And you were able to see a shift in the characters. Maybe not blatantly, but you were able to slowly see shape.
I agree with you, other than Boromir. Boromir is the only one that I have a problem with.
Well, he doesn't have enough time.
What do you mean? Okay, so Tolkien, by the way, the movies, we're going to go ahead and say this. They made 3 movies. The movies were awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were differences, but yeah.
True. But Boromir's character is drastically different in the movie than it is the book. And not only that, though, but the concept of Boromir anyways just failing at the very end, I think they do that better in the movie because they kind of portray this character anyways that's leaning, kind of thing. In the book, you never got that. Boromir was a beast. Boromir was awesome, and he loved the hobbits. I mean, he was there as the defender,
right?
And he does a great job with that, all the way up until all of a sudden he snaps and just all of a sudden, I want the ring. There is no lead up to it. There is no afterwards, and there's no afterwards either. It's not like all of a sudden, anyways, the magic of the ring, anyways, overtook him. It's just all of a sudden, just kind of like, well, he fell to the ring's power, and then he wanted the ring, and then he felt bad about that. You need more than that in a book, in my opinion. Boromir is the quintessential aspect, in my opinion, anyways, of what Tolkien did wrong. Which, by the way, I love Tolkien's work. I thought he did a great job. This was the one thing, anyways, that I had a problem with. Out of what, 4 books? This is the one thing that I had a problem.
Yeah, 4 in the Silmarillion, which is just a bunch of compiled stuff. But
what do you think about that?
I'd have to go back over reading the Fellowship again.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, I hate to say it, Yuksen, but I believe our time is up. Yet, I believe it went far better than either of us expected.
Indeed, Zeckthar. Why, this went so well that I'm kind of glad that Dan couldn't make it today. Although I am a little miffed about not having any mead.
Once again, Yuksen, I am sorry about that. How about I take you to dinner to make up for it? Corona mentioned a place right by the University of Washington known as Delfino's. He says it's the best pizza in town.
Very well, brother. I will try this food known as pizza.
Very good. And to those of you that listen, feel free to like, subscribe, or follow, or however you may be listening.
Quite right. And don't forget to visit our website at www.ashraka.com. That is www.asharacka.com.
Yes. Join us next time when we discuss the 2 most prolific movies made about Dungeons and Dragons, as well as a show.
Until next time, this is Yuksen
and Zeckthar, signing off.